My mother and sister tried to save me by dragging my abusive ex back into my life, but their obsession with control ended up breaking the family apart forever. They called it an intervention, like I was addicted to bad decisions and they were my cure. In reality, it was an ambush staged with good china and a store-bought pie. My mother texted the family thread on a Thursday, "Sunday dinner, 6 p.m, no excuses." I almost declined. I've been avoiding these invitations since I told everyone I'd married Mateo, a man who made space for me without making me small. My mother, Lorna, never forgave me for not marrying Ryan, the ex she still calls perfect with the same reverence she uses for her favorite him. I convinced myself it was safe. In and out, I told Mateo while he packed leftovers into containers because he always packs leftovers into containers. "I'll bring you some of Dad's roast carrots." He looked at me over the lid. "Do you want me to come?" I shook my head. "If it gets weird, I leave." He kissed my forehead. "If it gets weird, you call. If it doesn't get weird, you still call. Those are the rules." It was already weird when I pulled up. Extra cars. Porch light on too early, like the house wanted to be sure I couldn't miss it. Inside, the living room had been rearranged into an audience. My sister Kira perched on the arm of the couch like a judgmental bird. My brother Julian sat at the far end, arms folded, jaw tight. Dad hovered near the kitchen doorway in his company sweater, eyes doing that thing where they ask questions his mouth is too tired to ask. And Ryan, of course Ryan, stood up from the recliner like he'd been practicing. "Surprise," Kira sing-songed. "Family meeting." I knew then. The kind of knowing that hums in your bones. "Sit," my mother said, motioning to the love seat like she was assigning me a seat in detention. "We're going to talk this through like adults." "Talk what through?" I asked, though I already knew. "Us," Ryan said, smoothing his shirt. He looked exactly like a man who thinks mirrors owe him favors, fresh haircut, expensive watch. He lifted a gift bag. Tissue paper rustled. "I brought your favorite dessert." I remember things. I stayed standing. "I told you not to contact me." "That's the problem," Mom said brightly, as if she'd found the title of the evening. "You're shutting out your blessing." Julian's eyes cut to me. He shook his head once, small, warning. Dad rubbed his thumb along the seam of his sweater. A man I didn't recognize stood by the fireplace holding a Bible like a prop. "Pastor Ron," my mother said, somehow proud and apologetic. "He's been counseling Ryan. He's seen real change." I laughed, because the other option was crying. "You brought a pastor to convince me to go back to my ex." "Not go back," Ryan said quickly. "Start fresh. With accountability." I wrote vows. He reached into the gift bag and pulled out a small notebook like a magician producing a dove. "I can read them if..." "No." It came out sharper than I intended, so I softened it with a small please. My hands shook. I tucked them into my pockets. Kira hopped down from her perch. "Avery, be reasonable. You married the first guy who flattered you after a breakup. It was rash. We were all worried. Mateo is not a rebound, he's my husband," I said, husband like a handhold. "And my breakup with Ryan wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern." "Patience," Pastor Ron murmured, like he was coaching me through someone else's contraction. Ryan moved closer, palms open. "I was immature. I've learned. I've been meeting with Ron every week. I've got a better job now. I've stopped drinking on weeknights. I can be the man you were controlling," I said, keeping my voice level. "You read my messages. You showed up at my job. You followed me when I said I needed space. You yelled when I wore shorts and you sulked when I didn't answer fast enough and you called it love. I was scared in my own apartment. I left because I got tired of being small." Silence grabbed the room. Mom recovered first. "Nobody's perfect. Your father yelled." I yelled. "It's called marriage." "We weren't married," I said. She flapped a hand. "Semantics. What matters is family. And family is what you threw away when you ran off to a courthouse with a man none of us knows. Mateo asked you to dinner. You said you were busy for 6 months." "Because I was grieving," she said, eyes wet but dry. "We were all grieving." "For what?" I asked. "The version of me who did what you wanted?" Kira stepped forward with a folded paper. I wrote some things down. She cleared her throat. "We miss you. We miss the old you. We've made a list of steps for reconcile." Julian stood. "Turn that off," he said, not loud, but the room obeyed. He came to stand by me, like we were kids again taking on a neighborhood bully we both knew by name. "Avery doesn't owe you a performance." Pastor Ron took a breath like he might try wisdom again. Dad coughed into his hand. Ryan used the silence. I talked to your mom about a plan, he said, and my stomach dropped. A timeline. No pressure, just structure. Therapy. Dates. Moving in together by fall. Stop, I said. We're done. I looked at my father because he used to be the tallest person I knew. Dad? He looked at Ryan. He looked at me. He said, helpless, I want peace. I walked out. Julian followed. Mom called my name in that sing-song that used to work when I was 8. I didn't turn around. Outside, the porch light buzzed. My hands were still shaking. Julian put his keys in my palm. Take the truck, he said. I'll get a ride. I'm fine, I lied. Take it, he said. Text me when you get home. I sat in the driver's seat until my breathing remembered itself. Then I drove to the little apartment I share with a person who does not mistake control for love. Mateo met me at the door with a hand on my shoulder before I could even find words. I told him everything. The pastor. The vows. The plan I never agreed to. He listened without fixing, which is a kind of miracle. When I finished, he asked, "Do you want tea or French fries?" I laughed into his sweatshirt. Both, I said. The next day my mother sent a paragraph-long text about forgiveness and obedience. Kira added a list of books about fierce marriages, as if reading could retcon my decisions. Ryan texted from a new number, "Just hear me out." I blocked them all. That bought me 7 days. On day 8, Mom used the spare key she'd accidentally kept from when I lived with her. I came out of the shower to the sound of voices in my living room, the tiny clink of a spoon against ceramic, the cadence of Ryan's laugh. He was sitting on my couch drinking Mateo's coffee from my chipped mug. We came to talk, my mother said, like she'd done me a favor by breaking and entering. "You don't answer your phone." I went still. Then I went steady. "Get out," I said. "Don't be dramatic," she said, waving toward the kitchen. We brought cinnamon rolls. "Get out." Ryan stood, hands up. "Avery, I'm not the enemy." "Then why are you trespassing?" Mateo asked from the doorway. He looked at my mother like she'd tracked mud into a clean room. "Mrs. Lane, leave now." She blanched at the Mrs. Lane. "It's Mom," she snapped. "You don't act like it," Julian said, stepping in behind Mateo. He'd come over to help Mateo replace a light fixture. He crossed the room and set my spare key on the table. "I told you to give it back." "Don't threaten me," she hissed. "I'm not," he said. "I'm telling you a boundary." We documented everything. Photos of the key. A copy of the text where she announced her plan to fix this family. We changed the locks that night while Mateo read instructions off his phone like a bedtime story and Julian held a flashlight like a sword. I filed for a protective order against Ryan the next morning, hands sweating as I signed forms and told a woman named Denise the dates and times of all the coincidences that were not coincidences. Denise didn't ask me what I was wearing or how long it had been or whether I'd been clear. She said, "I'm sorry. Let's make it stop," and I cried, violent, grateful tears I'd been saving for years. Mom escalated. She came to my job with a bag of Ryan's things to give back, except they weren't mine, and she left them anyway, making a scene at the front desk until my manager asked if she needed security. She posted a photo of Ryan and me from 3 years ago with a caption about what God joined together. Kira messaged mutual friends to pray for Avery's rebellion. Pastor Ron emailed a list of scriptures for wayward daughters, and I dragged it into the trash with a satisfaction that felt like finally spitting out something bitter. Dad called more than he used to. At first he said nothing. Then he said small things. "Your mother is very set." Then, "Julian is staying with me for a while." Then, "I'm sorry the house feels like a courtroom." When I told him I'd filed for a protective order, he exhaled like a person surfacing. "Good," he said. "I should have said that sooner." The hearing was a Tuesday morning full of nervous people and bad coffee. Ryan showed up with a new haircut and a folder that looked important. He tried to catch my eye. I watched the judge instead. When it was my turn, I told the truth with my hands folded to keep them from shaking. Denise sat behind me like a quiet bodyguard. The judge granted a 1-year order, no contact, no coming within 300 feet of me, no third-party messages. Ryan nodded like he'd been magnanimous. 2 weeks later he showed up in the frozen aisle at my grocery store pretending to study peas. I left my card and walked out. The next day a detective called to say he'd been warned, next time would be charges. Mom called that evening, voice sweet and sharp. "You're humiliating us," she said. "Families don't take each other to court." "He's not family," I said. "Blood is blood," she snapped. "Then why does mine only count when it's convenient for you?" She hung up. 2 hours later she texted a photo of a baby blanket she'd crocheted for when you come to your senses. I muted the thread. Dad filed for divorce a month after that. He didn't announce it. He told me at a diner over eggs that tasted like butter and relief. I can't live in a house where boundaries are disrespect, he said, tearing his napkin into careful confetti. I waited 28 years for your mother to choose peace over control. She chose control. He moved into a one-bedroom with a view of the river and learned to make soup. He looked lighter, and it made me want to yell and hug him in turns. Kira stopped being subtle. She left a letter on my car windshield at the gym accusing me of tearing the family in half. She wrote that Ryan was repentant and that Mateo was a phase. I found her in the parking lot and handed the letter back. You don't know me, I said. You know a version of me you can manage. She rolled her eyes and said I was dramatic. I laughed and got in my car and shook for 20 minutes before I could drive. And life kept happening. That's the part that annoyed me when I was younger, how life refuses to pause for your dramatic moments. Rent is due whether or not your mother respects your marriage. Oil changes don't reschedule themselves because your sister decided you're an enemy. There were still groceries and spreadsheets and date nights where Mateo burned the garlic because he was telling a story with his hands and forgot there was a pan. There were sunrises over the city we started watching on Sundays from the hill behind our building, a thermos of coffee and a blanket I carried like a flag. There were small, precise joys as stubborn as dandelions. When I got pregnant, I told 3 people, Mateo first, with the test still wet and my heart doing gymnastics, Julian next, who screamed so loudly the downstairs neighbor knocked to ask if we were okay, and Dad, who cried into a paper towel and asked if he could be in the waiting room when it was time. Yes, I said, immediately. I did not tell my mother. Kira found out through the grapevine anyway and sent a box to our building with tiny socks and a passive-aggressive note about doing this the right way. The box went to Goodwill. I sent the note back with a sticky that said, "No contact means no contact." I put the hospital on alert. Restrict visitors, I told the nurse who took my history. No one in unless my husband or my father says so. She wrote it in my chart like a spell. When the day came, pain like lightning, Mateo's hand bruised from my grip, Dad's voice from the hallway trying not to sound scared, I felt something inside me settle that had been rattling since the Sunday dinner ambush. They placed our son on my chest, wet and furious and perfect, and the world narrowed to the 3 of us and the steady beep of a machine that said everything was fine. In the morning, a nurse told me a woman had tried to get our room number as family. Security had walked her out. I didn't ask which woman. It didn't matter. Ryan violated the order one last time 3 months later, sending an email through an old account he must have guessed. It was long and self-pitying. He was working on himself. He was a victim of spiritual warfare. He wished me happiness. I forwarded it to the detective. They filed charges. I didn't go to the hearing. Some closures are more dangerous than others. I kept mine domestic, in the life we were daily making. He pled out. I imagined him with a clipboard and a class called Accountability 101 and decided I didn't care. Some men never learn to love what they can't own. Mom tried again last Christmas with a card that said to my grandson and a check I mailed back. Kira posted about estranged daughters on Facebook and tagged me. I didn't reply. Dad came over and built a train track around our coffee table. He lay on the rug with our son and made steam train noises and let himself be ridiculous. Julian brought cinnamon rolls that were better than Mom's, which felt like a sacrament. If you map it on paper, the story looks tidy: ambush, boundary, escalation, court, divorce, birth, quiet. Living it is messier, grief braided into relief, love threaded through fear, guilt that still taps on my shoulder in the cereal aisle. Sometimes I wake up at 3 a.m. and stare at the ceiling and wonder whether I failed as a daughter or finally succeeded as a person. Mateo rolls over and drapes an arm across me like a weighted blanket, and my chest unlocks. People ask what I lost. Holidays, mostly. The version of a mother I wanted and didn't get. A sister who confuses loyalty with control. The illusion that if I just softened, I'd fit. People ask what I gained. A husband who stands between me and chaos without making a speech about it. A father who chose me loudly and learned how to make soup. A brother who brings a flashlight and holds it steady while we change locks. Friends who show up with cookies they actually baked. A son who thinks my singing voice is the best sound in the world because he doesn't know better yet. A spine I can feel when I stand. Sometimes I still smell my mother's house, lemon cleaner, roast carrots, the faint chemical sweetness of her hairspray, and I miss the simple version of love I thought I had when I was 15. Then I remember the couch arranged like a jury and the pastor with the prop Bible and the man holding vows for a wedding I didn't want, and I remember walking out into the buzz of the porch light in the dark that was not empty but full of possible ways my life could go. I am walking one of them, slowly, stubbornly, with a person who keeps my coffee warm and our son safe and my name mine. The other day, my father asked if I regret anything. Some, I said. But not the part where I chose us. He nodded. He took a picture of me and Mateo and the baby, our heads bent together over a book with chewed corners. He sent it later with no caption. I saved it as my lock screen. When the phone lights up, that's what I see, the family I didn't lose, the family I built.